The waitress thought she could humiliate my mom and get away with it. Her disdain was obvious from a mile away, but she had no idea who would show up for justice the next day. And trust me, this wasn't just a scene at a diner, it was the beginning of her downfall. But let's start from the top. It was 8:30 a.m., and Willow's diner was buzzing with life. The scent of fresh coffee and sizzling bacon filled the air as customers shuffled in and out, chatting about everything from last night's game to their morning commutes. In the corner, near the window, sat Loretta Wilson, a 56-year-old black woman with a warm, inviting smile that could brighten even the gloomiest day. She had settled into her seat, placed her order, a simple cup of coffee and a menu, and was enjoying the peaceful start to her morning. But that peace, it didn't last. Enter Mandy Carter, a 25-year-old waitress with sharp features and an even sharper attitude. Her crisp white apron was tied perfectly, but the sneer on her face was anything but professional. As she approached Loretta's table, her eyes practically rolled into another dimension. "Do you need something?" Mandy snapped, her arms crossed so tightly it looked like she was holding herself together. Loretta blinked, surprised by the hostility but determined to keep her composure. "Yes, sweetheart, I'm waiting to place my order," she replied, her voice calm and polite, though her grip on her coffee cup tightened ever so slightly. Mandy glanced around the room, as if checking for witnesses or maybe a manager who might reprimand her. Satisfied that no one was paying close enough attention, she leaned in just enough to make her disdain impossible to ignore. "Well," Mandy said with a smirk, "we don't serve people like you here." "Wait, what?" Loretta's smile faltered as her brain tried to process what she just heard. Surely she must have misheard. There was no way someone had the audacity to say that out loud in 2025, let alone in public. "I'm sorry," Loretta said, her voice trembling but steady enough to carry her words. "What exactly did you just say?" "You heard me," Mandy replied, her smirk growing more venomous. "I said there are other places. Places that might suit you better. This diner, it's not for you." The air in the diner shifted. Conversations died down as heads began to turn, sensing the brewing tension. Loretta slowly stood up, her chair scraping against the floor with a sharp screech that cut through the now quiet room. She wasn't the type to back down, but she also wasn't the type to make a scene without cause. "Let me tell you something," Loretta said, her voice rising just enough to command the attention of every single person in the diner. "This place suits me just fine. You, on the other hand, you're the one who doesn't belong here, and trust me, you have no idea who you're dealing with. You..." For a moment, Mandy looked like she wanted to say something else, but whatever courage she had evaporated under Loretta's glare. Before Loretta could leave, though, something, or rather someone, caught her eye. At a nearby table sat a man with a phone in his hand, discreetly recording the entire interaction. Their eyes met briefly, and he gave her the smallest of nods, his expression a mixture of sympathy and quiet determination. Loretta didn't say another word. She grabbed her purse, gave Mandy one last withering look, and walked out of the diner, her heels clicking against the tile floor like punctuation marks to a sentence she wasn't done writing. Little did Mandy know, this was only the beginning. Back home, Loretta Wilson sat in her cozy living room, the scent of lavender wafting through the air from a nearby candle. She cradled her coffee cup, though the drink inside had long since gone cold. Her mind raced, replaying the scene at Willow's diner like a bad movie she couldn't turn off. Her fingers hovered over her phone screen, the contact name Jason W. glowing faintly. Jason, her 28-year-old son, wasn't just her pride and joy, he was a powerhouse. A sharp, ambitious attorney specializing in civil rights cases, Jason had made a name for himself taking on systemic discrimination and winning. Loretta knew he'd handle this situation with ease, but dragging him into this? It felt messy. Loretta sighed, placing the phone back on the coffee table. "I'll figure it out," she whispered to herself. Meanwhile, chaos was erupting at Willow's diner. The man who had recorded the encounter wasn't wasting any time. By the time Loretta got home, the video had already started circulating online. Within an hour, it had racked up tens of thousands of views, with comments piling in faster than Mandy could have served a cup of coffee. "This is unacceptable. Boycott this place." "She deserves better," Who acts like this in 2025? Name and shame the waitress. Back at the diner, the owner, Frank Harper, was not having a good day. He stormed into the back office, slamming the door so hard that the framed photo of his family nearly fell off the wall. "Mandy," he barked, his face redder than the ketchup bottles on the counter. Mandy, seated at a desk with her arms crossed in a look of pure defiance, barely flinched. "Yes, Mr. Harper?" she asked, her tone dripping with sarcasm. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" Frank seethed. "That video is everywhere. People are calling for my head. They want me to fire you." Mandy smirked, leaning back in her chair. "Oh, come on. I was just protecting the brand. People like her don't belong here. They scare off real customers." Frank stared at her, completely dumbfounded. "Are you listening to yourself? Mandy, you've put this whole place at risk. If this blows up anymore, we're done, and by we, I mean you, because I'm not losing everything over your stupidity." "No." Mandy rolled her eyes, but said nothing. She didn't take the threat seriously, at least not yet. Back at Loretta's house, the weight of the morning's events finally got to her. She grabbed her phone and dialed Jason. "Mom?" His deep, steady voice answered almost immediately. "Hi, baby," Loretta said softly, hesitating for a moment before diving in. "Something happened today." She recounted the incident at Willow's diner, her voice trembling at times, but never breaking. Jason didn't interrupt, though Loretta could hear the tension building in his silence. When she finished, there was a brief pause before he spoke. "This isn't staying quiet, Mom," Jason said firmly. Loretta blinked. "Jason, I didn't tell you so you'd—" "No," Jason cut her off, his voice calm but unyielding. "This can't slide. What they did to you? It's part of a bigger problem, and I'm not letting it go." Before Loretta could protest, Jason was already on his feet, grabbing his car keys and pacing toward the door. "I'll call you later," he said, ending the call and immediately dialing another number. Within hours, the video was making its way onto local news channels. Jason, ever the professional, gave a measured but powerful statement to reporters. "This isn't just about my mother," he said, standing outside his law office, the video playing on a loop behind him. "This is about accountability. It's about ensuring that businesses, big or small, understand that discriminatory practices have no place in our communities. This fight isn't just hers, it's ours." The statement struck a chord, sparking even more outrage online. The hashtag #JusticeForLoretta began trending locally, and the pressure on Willow's diner was mounting by the second. Back at the diner, Frank Harper watched the news segment from his office, his head in his hands. "Mandy?" She was still in denial, scrolling through comments on her phone with a scowl. "This is getting ridiculous," she muttered to herself, unaware of just how much worse things were about to get. By the next morning, Willow's diner looked less like a cozy neighborhood spot and more like the backdrop of a media frenzy. A line of reporters and camera crews packed the sidewalk, their microphones and cameras pointed at the entrance like a firing squad. Inside, the staff moved like ghosts, their usual chatter replaced by a tense, suffocating silence. In the back room, Mandy Carter paced nervously, her once confident smirk nowhere to be seen. She'd been glued to her phone all night, watching as the video of her exchange with Loretta gained more traction. The comments were relentless, the hashtags even worse. She wanted to disappear, to be anywhere but here. Her wish didn't come true. The front door swung open, and in walked Jason Wilson, flanked by two sharp-dressed colleagues. His presence immediately turned heads. Dressed in a sleek navy suit, with a demeanor as cool as ice, Jason didn't waste a second. He strode straight to the counter, his polished shoes clicking against the tile floor with purpose. "Where's Mandy Carter?" he asked the wide-eyed hostess, his tone so steady it was almost chilling. The girl stammered, pointing toward the back. Before she could say another word, the door to the employee area creaked open and Mandy stepped out. She was still wearing her uniform, but it was clear she'd rather be anywhere else. Her apron was slightly askew, and her hands fidgeted nervously as she tried to straighten it. Her eyes landed on Jason, and her face went pale. She knew exactly who he was. "You're her son, aren't you?" Mandy asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Jason's expression didn't change. "That's right," he replied, "and today you have two choices. You either apologize to my mother publicly, or I make it my mission to ensure you lose your job and your reputation. And trust me, Mandy, I don't lose." The room fell dead silent. All eyes were on Mandy, who looked like she wanted to crawl under the nearest table. She opened her mouth to respond, but whatever excuse she had prepared drowned under the click of cameras and the low hum of whispers from the growing crowd of reporters outside. Jason stepped closer, his gaze unwavering. "This isn't just about my mother," he said, now addressing the cameras directly. "This is about holding people accountable. It's about making sure that prejudice, no matter how small it seems, has no place in our society. Whether it's a corner diner or a corporate boardroom, it has to stop, and it will stop." Mandy's shoulders slumped. She realized there was no way out of this. Later that evening, a video of Mandy's apology surfaced online. Her voice was shaky, and her words sounded rehearsed, but the damage was done. By the time the apology went live, Willow's Diner had already issued a statement announcing her termination, along with the news that the restaurant would be temporarily closing for staff retraining. Back at home, Loretta sat in her favorite chair, the glow of the TV illuminating her face. She watched as her son stood firm, delivering his statement to the press with the same confidence he'd had since he was a child. For the first time since that awful morning, Loretta felt a sense of peace. She knew she'd made the right decision by telling Jason what happened. As she watched him fight for justice, not just for her, but for anyone who might face the same discrimination, pride swelled in her chest. Her son had turned a moment of pain into a movement for change, and in that moment, she knew one thing for certain. The fight was far from over, but they were on the right side of it. How would you have handled the situation if you were in Jason's shoes? What are your thoughts on his actions? Share your stories. Have you or someone you know ever experienced something similar? Let's start a conversation in the comments. Don't forget to like this post if it resonates with you, and spread the word by sharing it with others. This story was created to shine a light on real-world issues and inspire change. Together, we can make the world a better place.